Paraphrasing The Stolen Child by William Butler Yeats. The poem The Stolen Child, penned by William Butler Yeats, got published in 1889 in The Wanderings of Oisin and Other Poems. The poem reflects the influence of Romantic literature as it features escapism and imagination. It is loosely a fairy tale based on Irish legends describing how a fairy tempts a child to come to her own world where there is no sadness, no weeping, unlike the human world. Mysticism and the occult. Yeats had a deep fascination with mysticism and the occult, and his poetry is infused with a sense of the otherworldly, the spiritual, and the unknown. His interest in the occult began with his study of theosophy as a young man and expanded and developed through his participation in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a mystical secret society. Mysticism figures prominently in Yeats' discussion of the reincarnation of the soul, as well as in his philosophical model of the conical gyres used to explain the journey of the soul, the passage of time, the guiding hand of fate. Mysticism and the occult occur again and again in Yeats' poetry, most explicitly in The Second Coming, but also in the poems such as Sailing to Byzantium and The Magi. The rejection of Christian principles in favor of a more supernatural approach to spirituality creates a unique flavor in Yeats' poetry that impacts his discussion of history, politics, and love. This poem has been set in the beautiful, bright landscape of County Sligo Highlands. Poem setting reflects the element of light, beauty, innocence, and purity. The Stolen Child references the belief in Ireland at the time that missing children were sometimes taken by ever-present fairies. Here, Yeats is in his early stage, influenced by the pastoral literature which idealizes the worlds of shepherds, lacking complexity, ruled by nature and the rhythm of the seasons. In these early works, he uses Celtic myths and characters in a hope to use them to provide an identity for Ireland. Let's discuss the first stanza. Where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake the drowsy water rats. There we have hid our fairy beds, full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. The first stanza of the poem starts with a description of the place where the fairies live. It is the place where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake. Thus, it is probably quite secluded from the human habitation of the area. Neither the rocky highland nor the lake seems to be a convenient place to live for its seclusion and remoteness. It also probably does not provide many opportunities how to get food or grow crops. The island where the magical hideout is placed is leafy, and there are the drowsy water rats. And this description only adds to the feeling of inhospitableness expressed in the first two lines. And with this known appealing vision of the human world, the place where the fairies live is contrasted. It is full of berries and of reddish stolen cherries. These tasty fruits represent a tempting sensation offered to human child that is being invited to the fairyland at the end of the first stanza. The first stanza, therefore, sets the pattern that is to be followed throughout the whole poem. In a descriptive way, the human and fairy world are being contrasted, with the human world appearing to be negative and the fairy world positive one. After every stanza, we notice a refrain, a chorus by the fairies. Come away, human child, to the water and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. The poem is called The Stolen Child, but the fairies beguile the boy into coming with them, rather than actually steal him. Come, fairies, take me out of this world, for I would ride with you upon the wind and dance upon the mountains like a flame. The fact that the fairies literally invite the child to come with them instead of commanding it or carrying it themselves hints that the human child has to follow the fairies by his own free will. This might be the reason why the worlds are depicted in such a contrastive way. The fairies play also tries to show the human world as something negative. I quote, for the world more full of weeping than you can understand, unquote, 12th and 13th line of the poem. The refrain of the poem also includes a reference to the waters and the wild, that means to nature. We can interpret this as a complaint. Maybe Yeats is dissatisfied with his society because it has moved away from nature towards a more mundane and urban lifestyle where freedom and innocence don't exist. Fairy is symbolic of corrupt society that eventually takes innocence to mold it into something sinister or to destroy it. And the human child symbolizes innocence of human nature. Imagery is there as you read the poem, and the phrase like this, hand in hand. So we can imagine a fairy leading the child away from safety, right? So allusion we can notice again within the same line with a fairy hand in hand. And in Irish and Celtic mythology, fairies would steal children and replace them with changeling. Stanza 2. Where the wave of moonlight glosses, the dim grey sand with light, far off by furthest roses, we foot it all the night. The fairies talk about a place that is far away from the distant roses, where the stream of moonlight falls on the grey sand and brightens them, where the fairies walk all night and dance, join hands together. Weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances, till the moon has taken flight, to and fro we leap, and chase the frothy bubbles, while the world is full of troubles and anxious in its sleep. In the second stanza, he writes about the fairies dancing in the moonlight. Now the concept of chasing the frothy bubbles of the waves implies a certain degree of freedom that is contrasted by a reality full of troubles. Water isolates the island that Yeats has created, freeing it from the limits of society and allowing the nature on the island remain wild. The island could also be a symbol of a watery environment that protects the development and innocence of the child. Now we can discuss what do we understand by these three words, weaving olden dances. By this the poet can mean desire for an older, simpler island, before Catholicism and Protestantism. And when he says mingling hands and mingling glances, it can represent the image of youth and lack of restrictions. And the line till the moon has taken flight, it means time is running out to accomplish what needs to be done. So beautiful imagery is being created by this line, the moon has taken flight. The moon is disappearing from view, running away. In the second stanza, the narrator adds that they would walk on foot all night on dim grey sands under the moonlight. They say that they would dance while holding hand in hand and unify their cheerful spirits until the moon sets down. They wander there and catch bubbles while the whole world is full of troubles, and people sleep in restlessness as problems never leave them in peace. The fairy urges the human child to come with them to the water and experience the beauty of the wild, holding hand in hand with her away from the world full of distress and melancholy, which is too much to understand for the child at the moment. Notice that after every stanza we have a refrain, so which is being repeated over here after the second stanza too. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Third stanza. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glencar, in pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star, we seek for slumbering trout and whispering in their ears, give them unquiet dreams, leaning softly out from ferns that drop their tears over the young streams. The use of rushing water as an image of freedom continues in the third stanza, where Yeats describes how the wandering water gushes in pools among rushes. It also relates the power of these spirits and shows how they can influence on everything and everybody's destiny. These supernatural abilities are typical for these beings, and once more they rouse the child to go with them to a perfect and free world. In stanza 3, the place from where the water at high hills move towards lower regions and plains and fill the streams and lakes there. It seems that the water could immerse a whole star. The narrator and the child engage in fun and frolic activities such as teasing sleepy trouts, a species of fish, and whispering in its ears, causing interruptions for trouts to dream. Voluntary pouring out dew from fern's water reserved into stream are inter alia, done by the narrator and her companion. The narrator persuades the child to come with her to the natural surroundings of forest and water bodies, as the human world is not a decent place. All it has tears and grief, which at the moment the child couldn't understand. After the third stanza again, the refrain is being repeated, come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Again the invitation is being given. Now it's up to the child whether he joins the fairies or not. Fourth stanza. Away with us he is going, the solemn-eyed. He will hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the cattle on the hob. Sing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. At last, the child decides to go with them. The narrator admits that the child would hear no more lowing, the mooing of bovines on the hillside settled by human beings. There would be no sights of cattle under a fire. No, there would brown mice moving around a container. The child then goes with them to the water and the natural environment and leaves the world of distress and tension. Now we can notice a change when the refrain is being sung by the fairies after the third stanza. What is it? The fairies are saying, "For he comes, the human child." Here is a change. Earlier, they were giving the invitation to the child saying that come away, O human child. Now they are informing us that their child has decided to accompany them. So, for he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand from a world which is more full of weeping than he can understand. When we read the poem, we notice that the structure is like a ballad, and this ballad structure acts as a mechanism by which Yeats disguises the corrupt nature of the controlling fairies, confirmed by the shift in refrain of the last stanza. In all previous stanzas, the line reads, "Come away, O human child," almost creating a sense of childish temptation by addressing the child as "O human child." It adds informality, whereas in the last stanza we notice in the same line reads, "For he comes, the human child." Okay, the disregarding any previous temptation, the absence of the O in this refrain reinforces the argument that the fairies are evil and utterly disturbing. The idea of the child now having a fairy hand in hand suddenly seems claustrophobic and paints a picture of the fairies with the visage of a demon. The refrain has also shifted to present tense, "for he comes." It is therefore a continuous happening and doesn't provide the reader with closure, rather leaving them feeling great discomfort and confirming the menacing and threatening nature of the fairies. Thank you.